Welcome back, dear friends, to our channel, Bible for Kids. Today, we continue our wonderful journey through the Old Testament, discovering more of God's incredible plan for His people. In our last episode, we learned how Moses, once a prince of Egypt, had to flee into the desert after defending one of his people. There, he began a new and quiet life, far away from the palace, far from Pharaoh, and far from the suffering of the Israelites. But even though Moses had started a new life, God's plan for him was not over yet. In fact, it was just beginning. Today, we'll hear one of the most amazing stories in the entire Bible. The moment when God speaks to Moses through a burning bush. So sit back, open your hearts, and get ready for another beautiful story from the Old Testament. After leaving Egypt, Moses went to live in a land called Midian, a place full of rocky hills, wide valleys, and endless stretches of golden sand. There, he met a kind man named Jethro, who became his father-in-law. Moses married one of Jethro's daughters, Zipporah, and started a family. Moses became a shepherd, caring for Jethro's sheep and goats. Every day, he led the flocks through the hills, looking for green grass and fresh water. The air was hot and dry, and the wind sometimes whispered softly through the desert. Moses was no longer surrounded by the riches of Pharaoh's palace. Instead, he was surrounded by silence, by stars at night, and by peace. But even though his life was calm, his heart still remembered the pain of his people. He often thought about the Israelites, still suffering as slaves under the cruel hand of Pharaoh. And he must have wondered, would God ever rescue them? The answer was coming soon in the most unexpected way. One day, Moses led his flock far into the wilderness, all the way to a mountain called Horeb, also known as the Mountain of God. The mountain was tall and strong, and the air around it felt still and special, almost holy. While Moses guided the sheep, something caught his eye. Up ahead, among the rocks, there was a strange light, bright and flickering like fire. Moses stopped and looked closer. There, right in front of him, was a bush covered in flames. The fire glowed brightly, twisting and dancing, and yet something was unusual. The bush wasn't burning up. The leaves stayed green. The branches didn't turn to ash, and the flames seemed alive, bright and powerful, but not destructive. Moses was amazed. He had never seen anything like it before. He said to himself, "I must go and see this strange sight. Why doesn't the bush burn up?" So Moses began walking closer. As Moses came near the bush, something extraordinary happened. From the middle of the fire, a voice called his name. "Moses! Moses!" Startled, Moses looked around and answered, "Here I am." Then the voice said, "Do not come any closer. Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground." Moses quickly removed his sandals. His heart pounded as he stood barefoot on the warm sand, realizing that something divine was happening. The voice continued, "I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." When Moses heard these words, he covered his face, afraid to look at God. But the Lord said to him, "I have seen the suffering of my people in Egypt. I have heard their cries because of their oppressors. I know their pain, and I have come down to rescue them. I will bring them out of slavery and into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey." Moses listened in awe. God had heard the cries of his people, and he was ready to act. But then God said something that changed everything for Moses. "So now go. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt." Moses froze. He looked at the burning bush, then at the sand beneath his feet. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. He, Moses, a simple shepherd who had run away years ago, was supposed to go back to Egypt to face Pharaoh, to lead a whole nation out of slavery. It seemed impossible. So he said, trembling, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" And God replied with love and power, "I will be with you." Those words were full of strength. They meant that Moses would never be alone. Not for one single moment. Still unsure, Moses asked another question. "Suppose I go to the Israelites and say, 'The God of your fathers has sent me to you,' and they ask me, 'What is his name?' What should I tell them?" God answered, "I am who I am. Tell them, 'I am has sent me to you.'" This. It was a name unlike any other, full of mystery and power. It meant that God always exists, that he never changes, and that he is eternal. Moses bowed his head, overwhelmed by the holiness of that moment. But even with God's words, Moses still felt afraid. He said softly, "What if they don't believe me?" So God gave him signs, miracles that would show everyone that the power came from heaven. "Throw your staff on the ground," God said. Moses obeyed, and his wooden staff instantly turned into a snake. Startled, Moses jumped back. Then God said, "Reach out your hand and take it by the tail." When Moses did, it became a staff again. Then God told him to put his hand inside his cloak. When he pulled it out, it was white and sick. But when he placed it back in his cloak again, it came out healthy, clean, and strong. God was showing Moses that nothing is impossible for him. Still, Moses hesitated. He said, "But Lord, I'm not a good speaker. I get nervous and my words come out wrong." God answered, "Who gave human beings their mouths? Who makes them able to speak or hear? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go, and I will help you speak and teach you what to say." But Moses whispered, "Please, Lord, send someone else." God was patient but firm. He told Moses that his brother Aaron would go with him. Aaron would help him speak, and together they would carry out God's plan. Finally, Moses understood. He could not run from God's call any longer. Even though he was scared, he knew that if God was with him, nothing could stop the mission. Moses returned home, told Zipporah and his family everything that had happened, and said goodbye to Jethro. He took his staff, the same one that had turned into a snake, and set out on the long road back to Egypt. This time he wasn't a prince or a shepherd running away. He was God's chosen messenger. As Moses walked across the desert with his family, he probably remembered his entire life. The palace, the mistake that made him flee, the years of silence, and then the burning bush that changed everything. Now he understood. Every step had a purpose. God had been preparing him all along. The long days watching sheep taught him patience. The lonely nights under the stars taught him to listen, and the burning bush taught him to trust. Sometimes God works quietly, shaping our hearts long before he calls us to something big. Children, this story teaches us many beautiful lessons. God speaks to those who are willing to listen. Even when the world is noisy, his voice can reach us in gentle and surprising ways. God can use anyone. You don't have to be powerful or perfect for God to do great things through you. When God calls you, he gives you everything you need. Just like he gave Moses courage, he will give you strength when you trust him. Sometimes God's plans seem too big and we may feel afraid. But remember, God's fire doesn't burn to destroy. It burns to light the way. When we follow his light, we can do amazing things. And so Moses left the mountain with his heart full of faith and his eyes shining with new hope. The same God who spoke from the fire would walk beside him through every challenge. From that day on, the burning bush was a symbol of God's power. a fire that never fades, a love that never ends, and a promise that never fails. In our next episode, we'll see how Moses returns to Egypt and begins the great mission God gave him, to free his people from slavery and lead them to a new life. Until then, remember this: God always has a plan. He never forgets his promises, and he is always with you, just like he was with Moses. May God bless you and your family. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video so more children can hear these amazing stories from the Bible for Kids channel. See you next time.